The nervous system can be broken down into CNS and the PNS. CNS is going to involve the brain and the spinal cord. The PNS will be the nervous structures outside of the CNS. This will include cranial nerves, spinal nerves, ganglia, and also autonomic nerves. I will discuss some of this very soon. It's important to know that the PNS is going to play an important role for us to take sensory information towards the spinal cord and the brain, because the brain and the spinal cord as part of the CNS is going to be where we're going to be integrating information and also having the decision making to understand what to do with that information. Once the information is gone to the CNS, we process the information and then we're gonna have the blueprint sent by the PNS. Therefore, I want you to know that information will be taken towards the CNS and away from the CNS by the PNS. For example, let's say we have sensory information going towards the spinal cord. There are going to be some terminology we need to be aware of. When you hear the following terms, sensory, afferent, dorsal, or posterior, I want you to think that the information will be going towards the spinal cord. Opposite to those terms, when the information reaches CNS, is processed, and is moving away from the spinal cord, I want you to think about these terms, opposing to the ones we've just discussed. Motor, efferent, ventral, and anterior. When you hear these terms, the information will be going away from the spinal cord. Now that we've talked about some of the basics about the CNS and the PNS, you should be aware of. Whenever you hear the term route, I want you to think about one-way communication. So it's almost like a one-way road. Information will be traveling in one direction. Whenever you hear the term rami, I want you to know that information will be traveling in two directions, just the same as a two-way road, in opposing direction. That's going to be a key fundamental basic I want us to be aware of. A route is going to have one-way communication. A rami is going to have two-way communication. Now we're going to put this into practice. Within the blue box are the important terms we're going to apply in this important diagram. Take a moment to look at the blue box and just be comfortable with some of these terms and what they mean. In this picture, there's a cross section of the CNS and the PNS, and now we're going to discuss how we can integrate both of these systems. First of all, we're going to start off by labeling part of my PNS and CNS. We're going to have the dorsal rami, 2, the spinal nerve. 3, the dorsal root ganglion. 4, my dorsal root. 5, my dorsal horn. 've highlighted pathways going towards the spinal cord. The fact that I've said number 1, dorsal rami, you want to know that the dorsal rami is going to innervate the deep back muscles and the skin of the back. Therefore, sensation or sensory information coming from here will be coming from the dorsal rami. That's a very important fact to be aware of. The sensory information from the deep back muscles or the skin of the back will be going towards the spinal cord using the dorsal rami. The rami means we have bidirectional communication. The spinal nerve is going to carry all 4 modalities. That's something you want to be aware of. We're not going to talk about that right now, but I do want to go into detail about the dorsal root ganglion, because when I say dorsal root ganglion, whenever I say root, I mean we're going to be having communication, as you can see here. The fact that it's dorsal root ganglion, that means it's going to be towards the spinal cord. Number 4, dorsal root. Dorsal meaning towards the spinal cord, root meaning one direction. So, pretty much what we have done now is discussed about how information will go from dorsal rami towards the spinal cord. Therefore, it's going to go through the following structures as you follow this arrow. This is how information will go from PNS to CNS towards the spinal cord. Therefore, let's say someone is feeling some pain in their deep back muscles. That sensation of pain will travel through the following pathway. It's going to come from the dorsal rami, going through the spinal nerve, going through the dorsal root ganglion, dorsal root, and then dorsal horn. Now the information has been communicated to the CNS. Talking about how information leaves, number 6, we're going to have the ventral horn. Number 7, we're going to have my ventral root. So key thing is ventral root is one-way direction, and ventral, therefore the information is leaving the spinal cord. After ventral root, once again, we're going to have the spinal nerve. Information will go through the spinal nerve, leaving the spinal cord. This is all efferent information. Finally, we're going to have the dorsal rami. The information from the deep back muscles of pain sensation came from dorsal rami. Therefore, the information has to go back where it came from. Motor information will go to through the dorsal rami. That's why we say the dorsal rami is going to have both towards the spine and away from the spine. Bidirectional information. Very important to follow the pathway as information leaves the spinal cord and remember the structures that it goes through. We have bidirectional, where we find rami. Now, speaking about the ventral rami, you want to be aware that everything else is going to be innervated by the ventral rami. Therefore, all other muscles are going to be innervated by the ventral rami. This is also going to include all of our internal organs. They're going to be innervated by our ventral rami. Now we're going to discuss the pathway that information takes for sensation coming from the ventral rami. This information will travel from ventral rami to the spinal nerve, going through the dorsal root ganglion, dorsal root, dorsal horn, finally reaching the spinal cord. We integrate the information, and then we're going to have the motor innervation leaving the ventral horn, going through ventral root to the spinal nerve and exiting where it came from, going back through the ventral rami. Once again, ventral rami is going to have bidirectional information.
Feel free to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you have any questions, contact MedTutors.